confidence in the fulfillment of our leaders' obligations to protect us.
Mayor Anderson, I'm sorry, I do have to call time. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you'll forgive me. I forgot to do something very important, to thank Mayor Anderson for his presentation. Thank you. Thank you. And to indicate to you that the time now belongs to Sean Hannity.
We got a lot of ground to cover. I want to thank the mayor for being here, taking time, especially out of his busy protesting schedule. And I know he's been going around the country on his I Hate George Bush tour. It's nice to see him back in Salt Lake City a few days. I'd also like to thank the mayor for taking time out of his new movie career to be here. I think that's very, very fortunate. Look, and I wonder how much the people of Salt Lake City paid for that little PowerPoint presentation from the 1980s. Now, in all that we just heard, this is the same. Thank you. This is.
Oh no, we're getting this all wrong now. We don't bring a guest into this house and not give him the opportunity to present his side of the story. So please do me the very good favor of dedicating 30 minutes of attention and let the man speak and present.
Thank you. 9:15. In all that we just heard, this is the same speech the mayor, this is the same speech. Do you notice liberals are not tolerant of other people's speech? Do you notice that? It's pretty amazing. Did you, in all this talk about impeaching the president, all the platitudes, did you hear any solutions on how we're going to win the war on terror against people that want to destroy our cities? Did you hear anything about how to help our president win a war after one of the worst attacks in American history? Did you hear any praise for these brave men and women that, as we speak tonight, are in harm's way? Did you hear any talk about any success, how our troops are responsible for liberating 50 million people between Afghanistan and Iraq, women and children and men and women? Did you hear any discussion about how we close rape rooms and torture chambers and mass graves tonight? Or did you hear the same old predictable, I hate George Bush, George lied, George lied, George lied? It is the same thing. We've had multiple new elections. We've had people paint their fingers purple. We have democracies emerging. We have a constitution in place. We have schools and infrastructure being rebuilt. We have the north and south of Iraq have shown enormous progress in beating back the insurgency. We have people now, our brave men and women are capable if we back them and support them. I quote the great Tony Blair of Great Britain. He once said, "I thought progressives were in favor of freedom over tyranny." And what we have done, well, now I want to address something before we really get started here, if liberals will let me talk. I know there has been much made and thank you all for coming out tonight, and thank you for being here. I know that there has been much made of this debate. There's been a lot of press, a lot of arguing, a lot of back and forth, the personalities involved. I am not here for anything to do with Sean Hannity. This is, no. As we speak, Mr. Cynical Liberal, as we speak tonight, as Ken said earlier, There are brave men and women in harm's way, risking their lives, putting their lives on hold, so that we may have a better life here today. This is about doing here in this country what is right for them as they do and sacrifice for all of us here so that we can have a better life. Let me give you an example. We have here in this building tonight, up there, I don't know if we can put the house lights on, the family of Marine Corporal Adam Galvez. I'm sure, I know, where? No, hang on a second. He was assigned, where are you? Those are his parents upstairs. Corporal Galvez was assigned to the 3rd Light Armored Reconnaissance Battalion. He's from Salt Lake City, he's from your hometown. 1st Marine Division, 1st Marine Expeditionary Force. He lost his life for us on August 20th. I just spent some time with their family. When a broadside bomb exploded, the vehicle also killing a 2nd Marine and also a Navy seaman. This young man was 21 years old. A lot of you college students are 21 years old. He gave his life. This isn't about these idiotic personalities or the press or the media covering this. There are real people, real soldiers, really sacrificing, really being injured, and really dying so that we may live free. I want to say to Tony and Amy, God bless you. You are in our thoughts and our prayers, and thank you for all that you have sacrificed for your country. You are in all of our prayers tonight. A month before, he had almost been the victim. There's 1 month before. You want to know what a great American hero this young man is from This young man from Salt Lake City. Let me tell you what a hero he is. 3 weeks before he died, he was a victim of a suicide bomber who had detonated a device. Was outside a building, and the building collapsed, and all of his friends were in that building, and he was able to manage to get himself out of the rubble. And then after that, he dug his friends out while he was being shot at by 15 snipers. And that brings me to where we need to be tonight. We must get this issue right, and we must stop the politics. Now, I think one of the greatest presidents in our lifetime is a guy by the name of Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan's talking about this great country of ours said, "We cannot escape our destiny, nor should we ever try to do so. That America, we, are the last best hope for man on this earth." He said, "We must defeat evil," and he stood up to the evil empire, and he was criticized at the time for doing it. He said, "There's no substitute for victory." And this brings us to where we are tonight. Look at this crowd. It's very symptomatic of where we are as a country right now on the issue of fighting in Iraq. And meanwhile, we have these troops out there in harm's way. It has literally become toxic. It has literally become poisonous. Who would have thought after 9/11 we'd find ourselves in this position? And it is frankly the level of partisan politics. Everything that is being said, even here tonight, our troops are hearing it. Our enemies are hearing it. Our allies are hearing it. They're out there in harm's way. And I've got to tell you something. With all due respect to your mayor, he is contributing greatly to this toxicity. And I'm going to prove this here tonight. How do you think our troops feel when Harry Reid votes to send these boys off to war, then while they're fighting the war that he sent them to fight, won't give them the equipment, the armor, the bullets, and the supplies they need, and he tells our enemies that they won the war and we lost the war? How does that make our troops feel? What does it do to embolden our enemies? Who won this war? Was it Iran? Was it Al-Qaeda? Was it Syria? Was it the Sunnis? Was it the Shia? You know, I'll give you an example. The troop surge, 3 weeks, Harry Reid himself on what was it, December 17th of this past year, said publicly, I support the troop surge. George Bush proposes it 3 weeks later, and on January 7th, for political purposes, one-upsmanship, we have Harry Reid say, no, I don't support the surge anymore. John Kerry and Joe Biden once supported the surge. Now they don't support the surge because George Bush supported it. You know, how did troops feel when people like Reid sent them to war, cut off funds, when Harry Reid, just back November 30th, said he would never vote to cut off funds? Now he's threatening to do the very thing. How do our troops feel when he announced that, quote, we are going to pick up seats as a result of this war? Chuck Schumer has shown me the numbers. The numbers are astounding. How do our troops feel when they hear that he's using their war for political gain? How do our troops feel when the Senate in January this year confirmed General Petraeus to go forward with the troop surge, and then Harry Reid says at the time, listen to the generals. And then on 4/23, 4 short months later, Harry Reid says, I don't believe General Petraeus. This is a general. Why doesn't he believe him? Because he's saying that there are positive signs coming out of Iraq. What do our troops think? What do our enemies think? Rocky, your mayor, supported John Kerry for president. John Kerry said, the following on 3/19/03. You just saw the mayor play the presidents talking about weapons of mass destruction in the lead up to the war. John Kerry voted for the war. John Kerry made the case for the war. John Kerry said the following, 3/19/03. I think Saddam's WMDs are a threat. That's why I voted to hold him accountable. This is your mayor's friend. He said to make certain we disarm him. Why does Ross not demand his pal John Kerry, who he campaigned for, be removed from office when he said the same thing as the President of the United States? It is pure, vicious political posturing. It is blind ambition, and it is toxic. When John Kerry said on 2/12/03, John Kerry said this, Ross's friend, leaving Saddam unfettered with nuclear weapons or WMDs. He's a member of Congress. He voted for the resolution for war, and he funded the war. He's a co-equal branch of government. When John Kerry said, leaving Saddam unfettered with nuclear weapons or WMDs is unacceptable, if he were elected president, would Ross be calling for his impeachment today, or would he be playing partisan politics? Have you ever heard Ross criticize his buddy? Maybe he'll do it tonight. I'll give him a chance. John Kerry, who made the same arguments, voted for the same war, and to this day is still funding that war. When John Kerry said, if you don't believe Saddam's a threat with nuclear weapons, you shouldn't vote for me. We should disarm Saddam, a brutal, murderous dictator. Did Ross, your friend, your mayor, did he ever criticize his pal John Kerry? I haven't heard it. Now, I'm sure he'll come up with some ridiculously clever way. He'll blame Bush for the words of Kerry. You know, because everything, if the dog bites, if the bee stings, if you're feeling sad, everything is George Bush's fault. Now, some of you drank heavily tonight. When you wake up tomorrow, you're not going to feel good. It's George Bush's fault. It's not yours. Some of you women may get pregnant. If you do, it's not your fault. It's George Bush's fault. Whatever happens. But what's happening here, ladies and gentlemen, the mayor and his liberal friends are applying a double standard. What they're doing here is they're playing politics with war. What he and his liberal ACLU friends are doing, they're hurting our troops, they're hurting morale, they're hurting the war effort, they're undermining what it is we're trying to accomplish. Your part-time mayor, your full-time protester, I wonder if he ever stops to think of the harm that he does and the recklessness of his selective moral outrage. The double standard is a point. I love you liberals, just keep interrupting, but you know what? It just shows that you're really free speech liberals. Now, I want to do something here. He showed video, I've got video. Let's go to the videotape. And while I show you this first one, I want you to ask you the question. Did Rocky ever call for this man's impeachment?
Earlier today, I ordered America's armed forces to strike military and security targets in Iraq. They are joined by British forces. Their mission is to attack Iraq's nuclear, chemical, and biological weapons programs.
Now, by the way, and that was in the middle of impeachment. In the lead up to this war that the Democrats voted for, because it was the Iraq War resolution of October 2002, let's look at some of Rocky's liberal friends. Let's roll the tape.
I think it would be naive to the point of grave danger not to believe that, left to his own devices, Saddam Hussein will provoke, misjudge, or stumble into a future more dangerous confrontation with the civilized world. He has as much as promised it.
There's no question that Iraq poses biological and chemical weapons. That's not in doubt. And that he seeks to acquire additional weapons of mass destruction, including nuclear weapons. That's not in debate.
The threat of Saddam Hussein with weapons of mass destruction is real.
We know that he has stored away secret supplies of biological weapons and chemical weapons throughout his country.
There is no doubt that Saddam Hussein's regime is a serious danger, that he is a tyrant, and that his pursuit of lethal weapons of mass destruction cannot be tolerated. He must be disarmed.
Iraq's search for weapons of mass destruction has proven impossible to completely deter, and we should assume that it will continue for as long as Saddam is in power.
A brutal, oppressive dictator, guilty of personally murdering and condoning murder and torture, grotesque violence against women, execution of political opponents, a war criminal who used chemical weapons against another nation, and of course, as we know, against his own people, the Kurds.
All right. Now, hang on. Now, let's go to the woman, let's go to the candidate, the so-called woman who's going to be coronated. And let's look, and I have no doubt Rocky will support her. Let's go to Hillary Clinton.
Today, Mr. President, we are asked whether to give the President of the United States authority to use force in Iraq should diplomatic efforts fail to dismantle Saddam Hussein's chemical and biological weapons and his nuclear program. If we in Congress don't end this war before January 2009, as President, I will. In the 4 years since the inspectors left, intelligence reports show that Saddam Hussein has worked to rebuild his chemical and biological weapons stock, his missile delivery capability, and his nuclear program. He has also given aid, comfort, and sanctuary to terrorists, including Al-Qaeda members. The writing is on the wall, and it doesn't say mission accomplished. It says it's time to change course. It is clear, however, that if left unchecked, Saddam Hussein will continue to increase his capacity to wage biological and chemical warfare and will keep trying to develop nuclear weapons. Nearly 4 years ago, our president rushed us into war in Iraq. If I had been president in October of 2002, I would have never asked for authority to divert our attention from Afghanistan to Iraq, and I certainly would never have started this war. This is a very difficult vote. This is probably the hardest decision I've ever had to make. Any vote that might lead to war should be hard, but I cast it with conviction. Their policies are failing. Our military is breaking. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. President.
Well done. You know, it was very interesting. The day after we captured Saddam Hussein, she gave a speech and she says, "I voted for that war." So, you know, I'm pretty sick. Look, I'm going to skip the next round because we're running out of time here. But, you know, your part-time mayor. Oh, come on. Your part-time mayor brought up the issue of weapons of mass destruction. One of the reasons after 9/11 is that we couldn't risk taking a chance because we have evidence. Saddam had used chemical weapons before. Let's roll that videotape. He used chemical weapons. He used chemical weapons. Does anyone in this room doubt an unholy alliance with Saddam Hussein, Al-Qaeda, and nuclear weapons, that they would use it against us? How could you doubt it? Now, one other thing. Hang on a second. I have other videos. Since we've been to Iraq, we have found hundreds of thousands of bodies that were buried. These were innocent men, women, and children that were murdered by Saddam Hussein. For those of you who doubt whether or not the United States liberated a good people that were being oppressed, we know the rape rooms, the torture chambers. Here's the mass graves. What do y'all? You know, your attacks don't bother me. So I will tell you this. Winston Churchill said, and remember Winston Churchill was so criticized for understanding Mein Kampf and Nazism way before his time and warning about the dangers. And we lost in that horrible war, but for the forces of America joining together with good people, we beat back the forces of fascism and Nazism and Imperial Japan, and Reagan stood up to the evil empire of the Soviet Union. And Winston Churchill said, an appeaser is one who feeds a crocodile hoping it will eat him last. He said, you ask, what is our policy? I will say, it is to wage war by sea, land, and air with all our might, with all our strength that God can give us, to wage war against a monstrous enemy, never surpassed in the dark, lamentable catalog of human crime. That is our policy. You ask, what is our aim? He said, you can answer with one word: victory. Victory against, at all costs, victory in spite of terror, victory however long and hard, and the road may be. For without victory there is no survival. Here's my final thoughts to you. I have about 6 more minutes. This enemy thinks nothing that we're up against. We all watched on 9/11 when 3,000 of our friends, our neighbors, our co-workers, our loved ones were murdered. This enemy actually believes that in their dark fanaticism that they're doing God's will when they kill innocent men, women, and children. They don't think twice about strapping bombs on their own children and sending them off into pizza parlors and buses to hurt other innocent men, women, and children. I go to church on Sunday, and often I see the wife of a guy that I graduated high school with, and he died along with his brother on 9/11. Sorry, my phone. And I see their 3 children that will never see their father again, and he also lost his brother on 9/11. And what I'm saying to you here tonight is, if we as a nation are not careful, we are committing ourselves to a course of defeatism, a course of appeasement. The result will be a far more dangerous world, a far more devastating attack on our homeland. This enemy is committed to destroying every man, woman, and children from Salt Lake City to New York to California and everywhere in between. There is an aggressive movement, and we hear it on the other side here tonight, with gathering momentum to literally hand Iraq over to Al-Qaeda and Iran so they will have a safe haven from which they can stage the next attacks against us. And this is, has anyone thought about the consequences? They'll have the oil resources of Iraq at their disposal. So I want to ask you a question. What kind of nation do we want to be? We want to be a nation that sends our young men and women off to war, and then when they're on the battlefield, we deny them reinforcements, armor, and equipment as currently being proposed by the very same people that sent them there? Are we a nation that wants to tell terrorists throughout the world that we're not going to stand up to them? Are we a nation we don't have the patience to defeat them, but they have the patience to take us on, and that will remain open targets? What does it take for liberals in this country to join with us in this effort? Does anybody in this room doubt that if the United States of America, if we put all our money and our time and our resources and we unite against this common enemy and we stop the petty, partisan, Bickerson debate that's going on? In other words, if Rocky sees that John Kerry said the same thing of George W. Bush, blame Kerry equally as well. Blame Hillary equally as well. Don't be selective in your moral outrage. I look around right now and I see at this point in time an enemy that is attacking us at every corner from the globe. From the Philippines to Indonesia. We see from India to Somalia. We see from Israel to Spain. From the United Kingdom to right here in the United States. I see an enemy that slaughters innocent babies, women, they torture, they kidnap. We didn't hear any of that in our opponent's presentation tonight. The free world, ladies and gentlemen, is under attack. Congressional Democrats, the fact that they would, without conscience, vote to send them to war, to make the same case as the president, then to deny them the money, the troops, the armor, the supplies, the bullets, and then to tell them why they are in harm's way, that they are losing the war and build the morale of our enemies is unconscionable. I'm going to close because they're telling me here my time is up. First of all, I want to thank you all for being here. With all due respect to everybody that has different points of view, we can do better than what is happening in this war. And I will say this, if Harry Reid wants to say our troops are lost when he voted to send them there, Harry Reid should be impeached. If Chuck Schumer votes to send these troops to war, Chuck Schumer, and then he brags about how they can benefit politically and gain more seats, the numbers are astounding, Chuck Schumer should be removed from office. If Hillary Clinton wants to be president of the United States and she can't make up her own mind from day to day, she's not qualified to be senator, let alone president of the United States. And if Rocky Anderson will not be equally intellectually honest and open and criticize the very same people that made the very same arguments, it's not George Bush who should be impeached or removed from office, it's your mayor. Thank you for hearing me out.
Well, now that we've got the boring stuff out of the way, we are going to turn to a question period. And at this point, I want to give you instructions for audience questions as well. When you entered, I hope you were given a sheet in which you could submit a written question. Representatives from the Associated Students of the University of Utah are going to be passing up and down the aisle. I'm going to ask you, when you complete your question, to please pass it to the closest aisle. The runners are going to be going up and down for the next 15 or 20 minutes, trying to pick up these question sheets and pass them in to me as quickly as possible. We're going to be looking for topicality, and I'm going to ask you to phrase a question so that both of these gentlemen can respond from an equal footing. Introduce the subject, introduce the issue. I'm not going to be too narrow on your topicality, but both gentlemen have to have the opportunity to respond from an equal footing. For the next 15 minutes, Mayor Anderson will have the opportunity of questioning Mr. Hannity. Now, in this process, Mr. Hannity's responses will be limited to 1 minute. But I've asked both gentlemen now to make sure that they don't ask a 3-minute question.
How about, that's hard for a talk show host.
So I'm going to ask each of these gentlemen to ask questions that are to the point. Sometimes they need some background information that we all can benefit from. But we're going to start the clock right now. Mayor Anderson questioning Mr. Hannity.
Well, I will provide some background information I wasn't able to provide earlier, but I think it is absolutely essential. If I get a chance to do that, you know, it seems to be a one-way street with some of you people.
Well,
just
as long as we understand the clock is running.
We rely upon governmental leaders for our protection. Billions of tax dollars are spent for security so we can be more safe and secure. While President Bush enjoyed the longest presidential vacation in 32 years, he completely and disastrously disregarded information that bin Laden was determined to strike in the United States. On August 6, 2001, just more than a month before 9/11, and that's when this photograph was taken, and 3 days into his month-long vacation at his Crawford, Texas ranch, President Bush was provided with a President's Daily Brief. That brief was entitled, "Bin Laden Determined to Strike in U.S." That brief stated that bin Laden had wanted to conduct a terrorist attack in the United States since 1997 to bring the fighting to America. It also stated that al-Qaeda members have resided in or traveled to the United States for years.
What's the question, Mayor? Have a question?
I know you don't want to know what's in the rest of this memorandum, but this memorandum that laid out, it was a Presidential Daily Brief, August 6th, just over a month
All right, ladies and
before
gentlemen,
the 9/11
everyone,
attacks
including
on
Mayor
this
Anderson. This is, by your agreed format, a question and answer period. And so I've got to call for the question.
So, this memorandum, this brief was given to the President. Mr. Hannity, don't you expect...
Here it comes! Hold on.
Don't you expect far more from our President with so much at stake when he receives a President's daily brief stating that bin Laden intends to strike the United States without ever talking to the Director of the FBI, the Director of the CIA, or his National Security Advisor?
Let me just say this. If you want to talk about the missed opportunities were in 1998. I want to quote when your friend Bill Clinton were president. Bill Clinton, I have a tape of it, and I play it often for you KSL listeners. I play it on my radio show. Bill Clinton was at a speech, and he admitted the Sudan had offered Clinton on a silver platter on 5 multiple occasions. Read my first book. I interviewed the person, Mansour Ziaz, who was helped responsible for negotiating the deal. Clinton himself acknowledged in a speech in Long Island, New York, and what Clinton said, let me finish. What Clinton said in that speech was, I wanted to take him, but we didn't have a legal reason to bring him here. He said,
Mr. Hannity?
Can I finish my answer, or are you
Well,
going to
you
interrupt
weren't
me?
answering the question.
Now, gentlemen, one of the things you both were so adamant about was that when the question time was posed, the answer would be offered up and it would not be interrupted. Now, everybody's called for the question. We've called for the answer. Mr. Hannity is attempting to effect an answer to a 3-minute question. Please, Mr. Hannity, would you complete your response?
So the point is, so what he said in a speech in Long Island, I talked to and I interviewed, and perhaps you'd like to interview some of these people, I'd be glad to set you up, but 5 times the Sudan offered on a silver platter bin Laden. Yes, sir. 5 times, here's my answer. If you're concerned about missing bin Laden, when Bill Clinton said, the Sudan offered it to me, I couldn't take him, so I pleaded. He said, quote, I pleaded with the Saudis to take him. I have the tape. I will play it on Monday's radio program. And then he said, they couldn't take him because he's a hot potato. I couldn't bring him here. Now, if the Sudan offered him, if he had Osama bin Laden to offer to the Sudan, your question really should be, and let me help you out here, your question ought to be, why didn't Bill Clinton take him when he had him on a silver platter before the attack?
Just 1 minute, just 1 minute, please. Now, the most hopeless person in all of this is me. And one thing I cannot do, apparently very well, is force a question to be on point and force a response to be on point. You know who's going to be the judge of that is you. All right? So I'm going to let these men play this out. All right? And recognize that now I'm becoming a witness as well. So Mayor Anderson, question number 2, please.
All right. The Iraqi people, you say that we went in to help them. Of course, we were Saddam Hussein's great ally when he was committing genocide against the Kurds. But now, since our invasion and occupation of that country, more than 650,000 Iraqis dead as a result, 3.5 million displaced, 40% of the professionals in the country have fled, over 2,000 doctors killed. There were virtually 100% of Iraqi children in school at the time before our invasion, now 30%. My question is, in the 17 months following the invasion, the risk to the Iraqi people of a violent death was 58 times greater than during the 14 months before the invasion. This has been a disaster for everybody. As Lee Iacocca recently stated, he said, stay the course. This is America, not the damn Titanic. Why do you insist, Mr. Hannity, on continuing this disaster with the United States viewed as an occupying nation in this Muslim country?
This is one of the key differences between yourself and myself, Mr. Mayor. If you relax, it's okay.
Now, everybody, let's take a deep breath.
This is one of the key differences, and we'll never convince each other. You believe we're occupiers. I believe the brave men and women that went over there and toppled Saddam and his two evil sons. I believe they're liberators. Yeah. I'm not done. I'm not finished. Can I finish this question?
Next question. Have you responded?
I'm not finished. I got 1 minute.
Please do.
I want to just say the reason is he said earlier in his presentation that they're not better off in Iraq. Let me ask you a question. Does those mass graves impress you? Did that have an impression on your mind? If we do not win this war, and you're not helping, if we do not win this war, you've got to understand Al-Qaeda and Iran and this madman called Ahmadinejad who wants to wipe Israel off the map, who denies the Holocaust ever occurred and wants nuclear weapons. He will take over that position along with Al-Qaeda, with the financial resources of the oil, and they will be planning attacks for Salt Lake City, New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, and Florida, Mr. Mayor. And that's what he doesn't get.
The national...
With more than a little trepidation, I call for the next question.
Our own National Intelligence Council, it is the umbrella group of all our intelligence agencies, have said that our occupation of that country, the invasion by the United States, has dramatically increased terrorism. According to the Iraq Study Group, 61% of Iraqi people favor attacks against American troops, and 79% of Iraqis say that our presence has had a negative impact on their country. How can you be so absolutely presumptuous on behalf of the Iraqi people to say we should be there when they want us the hell out?
You know, I got to be honest. It's somewhat bewildering to me how we can be so different. Because those same Iraqi people that you say did...
Hey! It's enough!
Those same Iraqi people that you're talking about, Mr. Mayor, they risked their lives, not once, twice, but 3 times. We saw them holding up their purple fingers. Did they look to you, sir, like they didn't want that to happen? Did you not hear the families of those slain people? I am telling you, the Iraqi people, if you look at, for example, the biggest problem we have in Iraq right now, and we were there, and I want to close, I can close with one tape I want to show everybody before I leave. I have 2 minutes at the end, right?
You do.
Okay. I went, and I'm going to show you a tape when I went to Iraq. And I spent time with these troops. And I communicate with them a lot. And the great news that's sort of not being told is if you look at the north, the Kurds have found themselves in a position where they're self-governing. It's not perfect, but it's a lot better. If you look to the south, it's not bad, it's not perfect, but it's getting better. You look at the General Petraeus' comments about the Anbar province, it's getting better. The key to our success now is in the Sunni Triangle area. And what you ought to be doing, Mr. Mayor, instead of this speech, which you have now given, that same speech, I could have spit out every word you said tonight. You ought to be joining with us and helping to find a solution. And the solution that you need to help us find is how, Mr. Mayor, will you help our troops win this war so that Iran and Al-Qaeda will not have that safe haven? You need to stop your obsession with President Bush and help these troops win. You're undeniable.
With 10 minutes expired, time for another question.
The best way we can support our troops is to get them home. Excuse me, that's not it.
Come home victorious.
Sean Hannity loves to divide the world among liberals and conservatives. Apparently he doesn't know I haven't been at all happy with these Democrats that signed that resolution. I wasn't out there stumping for John Kerry, and I'm not out stumping for Hillary Clinton.
Opportunity for the question, Mayor.
And
he just said something. I want to respond to that.
I will let you do that.
Because you know
because
something?
I can't stop anybody.
You know something, Mr. Mayor?
I would throw this watch away, but it was a gift from my wife.
I've researched you. I know you were out of town, what, 74 days out of the year last year? I know that you have a... Hang on.
You know, I knew you would do this.
Can I finish?
This is classic.
All right. Gentlemen, okay, right now we're going to freeze. I want to take a break. I do not want this to go any more personal. I want you to ask a damn question about Iraq, and I want you to answer.
I'm going to answer his question.
Get to the point, ask the question, find the bottom line, put it out there, and then you respond.
I was asking that question. He divides everybody, liberals,
Now,
conservatives.
the question, please, Mr. Mayor.
Let me give the background. Brent Scowcroft. Do you consider him a bleeding heart liberal? He was a national security advisor under Gerald